With all the economic uncertainty in the world right now, I have been thinking about job security. Not my own, obviously, that hits far too close to home right now, but that of video game characters. And what is the most eclectic collection of video game characters but the roster of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate? Now, while many of the games these characters come from have very silly setups to become obscenely rich with in-game resources, I will be ignoring things like that for our purposes here. It is clearly not canon that these characters live their lives by doing things like buying the same apple and selling it over and over again because for some reason its sell price is higher than its buy price. Plus, unless you live in an isekai anime, adventurer is not a reasonable occupation to put on a tax form. Instead, what I want to know is how each character on the Smash roster makes a living both before and after the camera starts rolling. As always, remember to click those YouTube buttons. Alright, here we go! We start at the lowest tier, where we find the beings who are not expected to participate in the horrors of capitalism. These are mostly wild animals fighting for survival in the wild, or being cared for by more intelligent beings. Every Pokemon goes here, even seemingly self-aware ones like Lucario and Mewtwo, who despite having communication skills just sit in a cave most of the time. We also have plenty of children, whose jobs are being children, or going to school. Some may also have some side gig, but do you consider a lemonade stand formal employment? I didn't think so. This surprisingly even includes Joker, who in his day life is simply a high school student. While I have heard murmurings of him being able to take up part-time jobs in Persona 5, which ones specifically are canon was never elaborated on, and Persona lore scares me, so I feel good putting him here. Banjo is surprisingly the real wildcard here, as the local Spiral Mountain area doesn't seem to have an economy? At the end of Nuts and Bolts, Banjo does take ownership of the deed to the mountain itself, but that's not a job, so... Flipping the bit away from that, we have Rob and Mega Man. Rock is essentially also a child under the care of Dr. Thomas Light, so he is also not expected to do much work aside from sweeping up the lab from time to time and smashing whatever scheme Wily has cooked up this week. And Rob is a toy, and as much as I love my teddy bear, he ain't bringing in any cash to the household. The next group up are those people who are seemingly beyond material needs. This may sound like a complicated concept until I show the three characters that wound up here: Palutena, Rosalina, and Dark Samus. The first two are a goddess, and the closest thing the Mario universe has to a goddess, while the latter is an eldritch space entity formed from Phazon energy, Samus's armor, and the Metroid Prime. Obviously, none of these people have a need to work for things like food or housing, it's just not a factor in their lives. We then have the characters whose job is basically living off the land. They seem to work directly to hunt or scavenge for the things they need rather than engaging in commerce. Steve is the most obvious out of these, as traditional Minecraft gameplay includes setting up a self-sustaining source of food and building materials. The reason Yoshi is here and not with the other animals is that Yoshis are shown in places like Woolly World to have complex society. Kirby seems to fit in this category as well, as he is commonly seen fishing or procuring food for himself. Sonic and Ryu fall into similar situations, which is a sentence no one has ever said before. They are basically just world wanderers, making their living off of a few high spikes of wealth and or help from their friends. There is genuinely no information on the ice climbers, so I'm just going to assume that they feed off of the eggplants they find on that mountain. Hero similarly has little information. The 4 Dragon Quest protagonists in Smash aren't any form of royalty, they are all just prophecy children. 8 even has amnesia, so I'm just going to leave them all here. The last 3 of Bayonetta, Ridley, and Meta Knight are all part of groups that aren't formal employment but do have resources to support the needs of the people involved. Meta Knight just seems to own a military, while Ridley runs a band of space pirates. Bayo was by far the hardest character to research, especially without turning Safe Search off, but according to her Smash Wiki page, she was a nun for a while, so I'll go with that. Do leave a comment if you have more specific information on anyone here, it drives up engagement. Here is where we start getting into the bizarre trivia section. These characters are what I have classified as work for hire, which basically means people ask them to work as needed. If you are a mercenary or a bounty hunter, you go here. This only really obviously covers Ike, Samus, and the Star Fox cast, so the rest will need further explanations. Terry works part-time jobs as necessary to pay the bills, which are then supplemented by his prize money winnings. The Mii's go here as they fill whatever role you as the player ask of them. Fighting a Dark Emperor, doing a Mario Kart, playing baseball, cosplaying Sans Undertale, etc, etc. The Inklings gave me trouble for a while as I couldn't figure out if the money won from multiplayer matches was canon or not, but thankfully Mr. Grizz came to my rescue. The Inklings that work for Grizzco are canonically paid fairly well for their systemic extermination of the Salmonids. I never said the work was ethical, but it is work. And now Pyra and Mithra. If this slot went to Rex, I would have an easy answer, as he has a job as a salvager, which is a well-respected position in all rest. But he's not on this list. His blades are. Now, if either Pyro or Mithra had the salvaging mastery field skill, I would conclude that they would help him with his salvaging, but they do not. However, over the course of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Rex gains another occupation. Vandom appoints Rex the new head of the Garfont Mercenaries, which despite the name are more like an odd jobs group than a mercenary company. This introduces a gameplay mechanic where you can send blades out on missions around all rest to help people with specific problems. While in the main story, Pyra and Mithra cannot be sent on missions, that is likely due to the fact that the game prevents them from being removed from Rex's party for any reason. As we see, they are perfectly fine with doing missions, at least with Rex in the main story. So after all of their plot obligations are complete, I fully expect that these two would help Rex with running the Garfont Mercenaries afterwards, be it administratively or actively going on missions. Moving on from that mess, we find the characters with a stable, long-term job, some of which are incredibly hilarious. For example, did you know that after Final Fantasy VII, Cloud works with Tifa to run a delivery company? Yes, Mr. Final Fantasy becomes a mailman. It's very funny. While it's not as prominent in modern games, the Mario Bros are still plumbers, especially if the movie is taken into consideration. Dr. Mario is obviously a doctor, while Wario runs a profitable video game studio. Yes, I am just as shocked as you are that WarioWare Inc. hasn't been closed down. Clearly, Wario has some bigwig in the FTC in his pocket. Ken and Kazuyo run major businesses. I don't know exactly what Kazuyo specifically does, but he wears a suit, so he's clearly in charge of something. And Ken deals in property when he's not punching people. Speaking of punching people, Little Mac is a professional people puncher. Yes, the Bruiser from the Bronx is the only fighter on the roster who canonically gets paid for fighting other people in sanctioned combat, which is hilarious to me. Okay, technically Red, or the Pokemon trainer, has a professional trainer position as the champion of the Indigo League, but he doesn't fight, his Pokemon do. And we round out this list with a batch of perfectly normal and expected occupations. Min Min is a ramen chef, runs a family business even, Wii Fit is a health coach, while Byleth is a teacher. Olimar works for Hokotate Freight and is basically a space truck driver. The Pikmin thing is just a way of surviving his various crashes on PNF 404. Finally, Mr. Game & Watch. He does a lot of jobs, which includes things such as a chef or firefighter, so I'll say that counts for this category for the sake of me not having to track down dozens of old LCD games. This next category is all jobs that have people work for their government or similar institutions. For example, Shulk is a weapons and tech developer for Colony 9. He makes and repairs things like guns and watches for the town. Isabelle is the most obvious one here. Her central role in the Animal Crossing series is as a secretary. Villager is likewise, as the recent Animal Crossing games put you in charge of Isabelle, with New Leaf specifically putting you in the shoes of the town mayor. For some reason, Pac-Man is here? The Pac-Land government apparently employs him as a ghost exterminator. The Belmonts similarly remove spooky things at the behest of what I assume is the Catholic Church, which considering the era Simon and Richter's games take place in, that is basically the government. Angel Boy and his edgy OC work directly for the gods in the Kid Icarus setting, Pit for Palutena and Dark Pit eventually getting on board with Viridi. Link is commonly a knight of the Kingdom of Hyrule, with the Hero of the Wild specifically being a bodyguard to Zelda. Working for royalty also applies to Robin and Lucina. Lucina used to be royalty, but due to time travel nonsense, she doesn't legally exist anymore? I don't know, time travel is weird. Bowser Jr., you know a sentence is good when it starts with Bowser Jr., is the son of the Koopa King and leads many military escapades. The reason Junior isn't with his dear old dad is that Junior seems to work more in the military and intelligence fields rather than the actual running of the kingdom. And then we have Snake and Sephiroth, who are genetically engineered super soldiers that work for the government. And yes, Shinra counts as the government for our purposes here, they own Midgar. At last, we reach our final category. These characters genuinely are the government. Their job is making sure that there is a civilization to do commerce in. All of these should be fairly self-explanatory, as they are all directly stated to be an active monarch or similar position for their local government at some point. There are also those that will be elevated to such positions such as princes and princesses. Well, except for DK, who is here mostly since the Kong family is the closest thing Kong Island has to a reigning governmental body. And that's it. My arbitrary thought experiment is now complete. You may all continue with your day. Good luck with your endeavors. Goodbye.